also a time for question and answers as well. So, but in between the presentation, if you have any question, kindly drop it in the dialog box for question and answers, and then we'll try to read it up. Okay. So the program outline is starting right away. My name is Erica Eram Kwame. I'm the lead audit head or audit lead for internal audits at United Bank for Africa, in charge of business office audits. Okay, we welcome our chair for certification and professional development committee, Mrs. Brenda Milos-Papo, to give us the opening or welcome remarks before we start our webinar. Madam Brenda, please, you have the floor.
Very much, Erica. And good afternoon to all of us. On behalf of our president, the Governing Council of the Institute, and the Certifications and Professional Development Committee, I want to welcome all of us to this afternoon's session. Today's session focuses on developing an internal audit plan. As we begin our planning cycle for 2026, it's important for us to revisit our global internal audit standards, specifically Domain 4, which talks about managing the internal audit function. And Principle 9 talks about planning strategically, which emphasizes the responsibility of the Chief Audit Executive to position the internal audit function for a long-term success through strategic planning. This afternoon, we'll explore how to develop an internal audit strategic plan. And it's my firm belief that after the session, we'll be equipped to be able to develop robust strategic plans when it comes to internal audit that enables us as internal audit functions to fulfill our mandate effectively, regardless of which sector we find ourselves. And we are privileged this afternoon to have Mr. Frederick Pokoo-Aikins, a member of the Research and the Publications Committee, agreeing to lead us in this discussion. And so I would like to thank Mr. Pokoo-Aikins for his generosity in sharing his insights with us this afternoon. And a special thanks goes to you, our members, for joining the session. Indeed, if you fail to join this afternoon, this session will not go on. So I want to say a very big thank you to you. And as the current council comes to the end of its term, I want to take this opportunity to also say thank you to our members and non-members who for the past 2 years have graced this platform in sharing their insights with us. We say God richly bless all of them. And as I hand over to you, Erica, I want to encourage all of us to participate fully so that together we can learn. Thank you very much. I hand over to you.
Thank you, Madam Brenda, for the opening remarks. That was very quick and straight to the point. Okay, so I want to introduce our speaker for today so that we start our program immediately. So as we all know, or as we can all see, our facilitator for today is in the person of Mr. Frederick Pokoo-Aikins. Mr. Aikins is a highly accomplished professional with 28 years of experience in internal audit and enterprise risk management. As the CEO of Frederick Consulting and the lead facilitator at Prime Post, he provides expert advisory and training on internal auditing, governance, risk management, and internal control. And Frederick, he currently holds an MBA in governance and risk management, and he's a certified internal auditor. As a forward thinker, Mr. Frederick is also a strong advocate for integrating artificial intelligence, into internal audits to enhance planning and continuous monitoring, demonstrating his commitment to modernizing the field. Beyond his technical expertise, Mr. Frederick is deeply passionate about leadership, development, and soft skills. He designs and delivers high-impact training through his commitment at the Prime Post on emotional intelligence, communicating, and team effectiveness. His belief is that many organizational issues stem from leadership and culture and not just technical failures. Mr. Frederick's practical and engaging styles encourages participants to develop self-awareness and emotional intelligence, ultimately contributing to a healthier organization and more effective society. My audience and colleagues, I present to you Mr. Frederick Pokoo-Aikins, our facilitator for today's webinar in developing internal audit strategic plan. Mr. Facilitator, your audience, our facilitator. Mr. Facilitator, I have.
Okay. Thank you very much, Erica. Just testing. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you clearly.
Fantastic. Okay. So I just thank God for being alive at this time to be able to do this. And thank you to the chair of is it CPD? Is that right? Yes. So Brenda, thank you very much for the opportunity. And thank you to the council for approving that I should do this. And thank everybody for being here. So we want to spend the next, it's supposed to be 2 hours, right? But of course, I can't spend the 2 hours talking. So Erica, I'll do like 1.5 hours, and then we can use the next 30 minutes, or probably 1 hour, 40 minutes, and then the next 20 minutes for some Q&A. All right?
Okay, that's awesome.
Good.
We can
Okay,
try
so we
and
want to talk about, pardon me?
we can try and do about 1 hour, 20 minutes, so we can have ample time for questions.
Great, great.
Okay.
I just have to say that there's a lot to cover. You see, this is a new standard, more or less. And even though we had been doing internal audit strategic plans, you will all bear with me that a lot of emphasis has been placed on. I mean, we have actually a whole principle, which is talking about the fact that we should plan strategically. Okay, so a lot is required of us. And so we will cover a lot of material. I'll try my best not to rush, even though I have to speed up a little bit because it's not material that can be consumed in just an hour and 20 minutes or even in a day. So, but it's a webinar, so we'll just touch on the most important parts. And then we'll leave the rest for possible days where we can have trainings. Okay, so let's just dive in quickly. So developing the internal audit strategic plan. I titled it, gave it a subtitle, which is Aligning Assurance with Strategy. And before I start everything else, I just want to share with you my favorite quote, which talks about literacy. And it says that the illiterate of the 21st century will not be those who cannot read and write, but those who cannot learn and relearn. Can anyone tell me who said this? Who made this quote? Just put it in the chat box. Let's see. Let's see if people know how. Yes. Okay. Can anyone just share with me who said this? Okay, so let's move on. This statement is the quote was made by Alvin Toffler. There's more to this statement than meets the eye. But all I'm trying to say is that in this webinar, we'll have to adopt a posture where we will open up and then be prepared to learn new things and also unlearn and relearn a few things. Okay. All right. So I have another quote here. If you don't know where you are going, you end up someplace else. Okay, I have a chat here. Oh, okay. Erica, that's you, Encouraging them to respond in the chat box. That's great. So If you don't know where you are going, you end up someplace else. Now, I find this code very relevant to internal audit because if I look at it through the lens of internal audit, all it's telling us is that if we don't plan where we are going, we may find ourselves drifting and we may end up where we don't even know. It's important to be sure of where we are going. And that is why we have to understand that it's important to have a strategy in place. The emphasis is on a strategic plan. And let me say at this point in time that when we talk of a strategic plan, we are talking about a forward-looking document. We'll get to the details, but let me start here. We are not talking about number crunching, which is the main thing when it comes to an annual audit plan, which is very tactical and operational. This is strategic. So let's all have in mind that we are going to be talking about something that is, or a document that is forward-looking. Okay? All right. Now, I love stories. So let me start this discussion by sharing with you a story about the hospital audit that missed the point. A few years ago, there was this large hospital. It's in Ghana. It came under the spotlight for repeated shortages of critical medicines. Anytime patients had to be given some critical medicines, they found out that there was none in the stores. So they began an investigation. And when the investigation began, everyone expected the internal audit unit to have flagged the risk long before it escalated. But the auditors had been busy. They were checking petty cash, verifying attendance sheets, and taking off receipts. And all that is important work, yes. But none of it addressed the real strategic risk, the hospital's weak procurement and supply chain processes. Okay? So the matter went to the PAC, Public Accounts Committee. And then when the auditors were asked why these issues weren't prioritized, the answer was simple. It wasn't in our audit plan. The truth is that they had a plan, but they had no strategic plan. Their focus stayed tactical, while the hospital's biggest risk went unchecked. I mean, this story makes us understand, at least I get it from the story, that internal audit doesn't just need an annual list of audits. We need a strategic roadmap that ensures that our work stays aligned to the risks and priorities that matter most to the organization and its shareholders. This is something that happened in the public sector, but it is the same thing that is occurring even in the private sector, where I know of a leading bank that leading bank had a strong internal audit team. And every year, the team delivered an audit plan which was packed with branch reviews, cash counts, loan file checks. On paper, they were busy. And management kept praising them that, Charlie, they were very diligent. But behind the scenes, do you know what was happening? The bank was actually shifting into digital operations, mobile money, internet banking, and then fintech partnerships. Within 2 years, guess what happened? Over half of its transactions were happening online. Then came the first major cyber fraud incident. Customers lost millions. Regulators demanded answers. and the board tend to internal audit. Why didn't you warn us? But the auditors had no good answer. Their plan had stayed rooted in the past, whilst the bank's biggest risks had moved into cyberspace. What they lacked was not hard work, but a strategic plan that aligned audit focus with the bank's digital transformation. Again, this story tells us something that without a strategic plan, even the busiest internal audit function can be irrelevant, leaving organizations exposed to the risks that matter most. I have a question to ask here. Is your organization or is your internal audit spending more time looking at today's transactions or preparing for tomorrow's risks? You can share your answer and be honest. Okay, let's move on. I mean, I want us to adopt a certain approach. This quote was made by Rudyard Kipling. He says that I keep 6 honest serving men. They taught me all I knew. Their names are what and why and when and how and where and who. So I have decided to model this webinar after the 7 6 friends. So we have why, what, when, how, where, and then who. So we pick each one and see how we can use it to explore further into the issue of strategic planning. So let's start with why. Simon Sinek said it's always good to start with why. So let's start with why. That is the rationale for strategic planning. Now, anytime we talk about strategic planning, as far as the internal audit is concerned, that is an IASP, then we are trying to address the shifting expectations of 3 very powerful audiences. That is the board, regulators, and stakeholders. These 3 audiences are looking for something, and they are asking some questions. The board is asking, how are you helping us achieve our goals safely? In other words, they are looking for strategic alignment and assurance. Regulatory bodies are also after compliance and professional standards. And over here, you would realize that without a plan, internal audit risks being seen as reactive and underpowered. Okay. Is the sound okay now? Hello, is the sound okay?
Yes, the sound is better. It's okay.
Okay, great. I just saw that in the chat box. Okay. All right. So the third audience, third part, the third member of the audience is stakeholders. They are also asking the question, what value do you bring? So anytime you are thinking of answering the question, why do we need an internal audit strategic plan? Then you must have some things in mind. I don't want us to say that, oh, well, the GIAS says we should have a strategic plan. That is true, and that is one of the very key reasons why we want to do a strategic plan. But it goes beyond that. It is because these 3 audiences, they are asking questions. For example, the board, like I said, is looking for strategic alignment and assurance. They no longer want internal audit to just tick the box. They expect us to show that our work is going to support the strategy and not just be talking about the control environment. Sometimes auditors get obsessed and are proud to be called internal control experts. Control experts and so what? Control is a means to an end. The board is interested in controls to the extent that it will be able to help the organization to achieve its strategy. So when you have a strategic plan, then the chief audit executive or the head of audit will be able to demonstrate that there is a clear vision and a mission for the function, and that there are strategic objectives, for example, being a trusted advisor or enabling risk-informed decisions. And there are also KPIs that connect assurance work to the board's priorities. That is some of the things that the board is looking for. Regulators are also looking for compliance. Bodies like Central Bank Agency, IIA, they are always raising the bar. They expect internal audit to demonstrate independence, competence, and systematic planning. So when you have an internal audit strategic plan, one of the things is that you are proving that your work is aligning to the 2025 Global Internal Audit Standards, especially Principle 9 and the substandards over there. It also demonstrates how resource constraints are documented, are considered and addressed, and how continuous improvement and innovation is factored into the audits that are being carried out. Number 3, stakeholders. These people want more than just fault finding. They ask, what value do you bring? So when you have a strategic plan, it allows internal audit to communicate its role as a value-adding partner, not just a watchdog. It is able to demonstrate that it is giving attention to areas that are important: cybersecurity, fraud, operational resilience, governance effectiveness. These are things that stakeholders are interested in. And with the strategic plan, you are demonstrating to stakeholders that you can be able to track and report results in a way that builds confidence and also credibility. Okay, so apart from demonstrating apart from answering questions from those 3 powerful audience, the board, the regulators, and also the stakeholders, when you have a strategic plan, one of the reasons that you have it is that it is able to show the value that you are bringing on board, and also demonstrate or showcase your relevance. In the first place, your strategic plan will demonstrate that you are aligning with the new standards. Just for emphasis, at this point too, I don't want to say that, look, with the Principle 9 and its 5 standards, it mandates that the chief audit executive must develop and implement a strategy aligned with the organization's strategic objectives and stakeholder expectations, including the board and senior management. And so this makes a strategic plan no longer optional, but a requirement. It is also fulfilling the purpose of internal auditing, because a strategic plan projects not only assurance, but also value creation and future preparedness. The purpose statement, which underpins the standards, talks about internal audits strengthening the organization's ability to create, protect, and sustain value by providing the board and management with independent, risk-based and objective assurance, advice, insight, and foresight into the future. And so we don't only want to let management and the board and our stakeholders, regulators, know that we are providing assurance, but we are creating value, and we are also prepared for the future. The third thing to note is that when you look at domain 3, it talks about governance. And so there must also be governance and accountability within the internal audit shop. And a strategic plan supports it by clarifying roles, setting strategic priorities, and institutionalizing oversight, because in your strategic plan, we will see a part of it is the people aspect. Who owns the strategic plan and who oversees it? So there's accountability even within the internal audit shop. Again, the strategic plan, I see it as a tool by which we can use to demonstrate or drive value and demonstrate relevance. And without it, we shall be seen as reactive or isolated. You are in your corner using the cyclical approach to generate audits, and then you don't talk to anybody. And then that's it. Seriously, when we talk of demonstrating relevance, I don't think you can demonstrate relevance if you don't enter the boardroom or you're not in management meetings. This strategic plan will throw you into the arena of governance with top-level people. So a written strategy allows internal audit to show how its efforts align with the broader organizational strategy. It's the board and the CEO, senior management, who are responsible for developing the strategy. And so if you are to want to develop a document which will align with that strategy, then obviously you have to talk to them. So if you have to answer the question of why do we even need a strategic plan, I hope no one will just say that, well, it's because the standard is saying that we should do it. The standard says that you have to prepare a plan. So that is why I'm doing it. No, you must have more than enough reasons to spend time and resources on developing a strategic internal audit plan. Okay. The next thing we want to talk about is what? What is a strategic plan? Can somebody put in the chat what a strategic plan is? You can see some chats here. Are they referring to me? Okay. So what is a strategic plan? Internal audit, an IASP. What is an IASP? Somebody put something there right now.
So we have a long-term plan.
Long-term plan.
Yes, sir. Yeah.
Okay. Any more? No, this is something that I believe we have been doing. So what have we been doing? What is it we have been doing? Long-term plans. Yes. Any more? Okay, let's move on. Erica, do you see how the time is flying?
I see how the time is flying.
Yes, I'm so scared. Okay,
Don't worry.
so let's
You have a
move
lot
on.
of time.
Okay.
We'll give you more time.
Okay. So now let's talk about what. Please, feel free to put your questions in the chat box, or you want us to wait and then we do it. I prefer taking them online. I mean real time, but that's okay. Whichever way it comes, we'll handle it. Okay, so what? We are talking about what? Now, we're trying to define the strategic plan. Now, by way of definition, the IASP, when I say IASP, I mean Internal Audit Strategic Plan, it's a long-term roadmap, usually 3 to 5 years, that sets out the vision, mission, priorities, and resource requirements of the internal audit function. And again, I want to emphasize here, we are not talking about number crunching. I have seen a couple of, sometimes I see some of these internal audit plans and they say it's internal audit strategic plan, but, and you see a lot of work has been done in terms of, analysis and all that. Sometimes the SWOT analysis and other things are there, but I don't see the long-term roadmap. It's missing. But in a strategic plan, we are saying that it is a long-term roadmap. So at least there must be a roadmap somewhere which sets out the vision, mission, priorities, and resource requirements of the internal audit function. What is the focus? The focus is big picture alignment with the organization's overall strategy and risk landscape. In other words, when you take an internal audit strategic plan, you must be able to realize that it is linked. The context of your plan must be the organization's strategic plan. So you see, you can't effectively have a good strategic plan for the internal audit function if you don't even know, or you don't have a copy, you have not read the strategic plan of the organization for which you're serving. It's not possible, because your plan should be aligned with that document. So how do you produce a document which is aligned with something you have never seen or don't even understand or read? What is the purpose of the strategic plan? It is to position internal audit as a strategic partner, and not just somebody or a unit or division or directorate that is just checking or ticking boxes, or a compliance checker. It is meant to demonstrate value or value creation to the board, audit management, and the audit committee, and show how the function will adapt to changes. So it is a living document. Let's understand that the internal audit function is meant to be helping the management accomplish its objectives, its goals. So it must be in tandem with what they do. So you are in step with what management is trying to do. So you don't isolate yourself. You must have a copy of the strategic plan of the organization. Read it, understand it, get the strategic context, and then you will be able to say, well, okay, so if this is where the institution or the organization or the company is moving, then we have to also do this to make sure that we are helping them to achieve their objectives. And what is the content? Content, we'll talk about the content or the components into detail, but over here, just a brief, it includes the IIA vision and mission, strategic objectives, skills and capacity building roadmap, technology and development plan, KPIs to measure effectiveness, and then stakeholder engagement strategy and all that. It can have all those things. All right. Okay, so by way of analogy, the internal audit strategic plan is the compass. It tells you where the function is heading and why. Let me quickly contrast it with the annual audit plan, which is a one-year operational plan that details the specific audits, projects, and assurance or advisory engagements that IIA will carry out. It is totally different. Its focus is the tactical delivery of assurance based on the most significant risk for the year. And the purpose is to ensure audit coverage of high priority risk areas, allocate resources and timelines for each audit engagement. Very different from what the strategy is talking about. And you see, when the strategy is meant to show preparedness for the future, the audit plan, the annual audit plan, is demonstrating responsiveness to the current risk environment. And the audit plan normally is a list of, like, audits, projects with objective, scope, and timing, resource allocations as to who will do what when very necessary. And most often than not, it is linked to the organization's risk register or the ERM framework. So you see, there are two different things. So by way of analogy, the audit plan is the itinerary. It tells you what specific stops you will make this year, i.e. the projects that you'll be undertaking this year. Very different from the strategic plan. But today, your focus is not on the annual audit plan. It is on the strategic plan, the internal audit strategic plan. Let me skip this. So in terms of some summary key differences, okay, you have the time horizon, scope, audience, purpose, nature, and output. And for the strategic plan, it's 3 to 5 years, annual audit plan 1 year. In the strategic plan, you have vision, priorities, capacity, positioning. But in the annual audit plan, you have specific audits and engagements. Now, in the strategic plan, okay, in terms of audiences, you are serving both the same, even though in terms of purpose, the strategic plan is long-term direction and alignment, whilst the audit plan is for short-term execution. Again, in terms of nature, the strategic plan is strategic. It is the big picture, whilst the annual plan is tactical and operational. Again, in terms of output, you get you end up with a strategic plan. You end up having a roadmap, some objectives, and then some resource strategy. But the annual audit plan, you get just your engagement schedule and your audit coverage. Simple. So I have a question here. And please, I need to see people answering. What would happen if internal audit had no strategic plan, but only an annual audit plan?
Kindly drop your answers and your responses in the chat box, please. We're expecting to see your response.
Okay, let's move on. I would have loved to see some answers, but
so we have a couple of answers here. One from Nasha says, "Will not adapt to change."
It will not adapt to change. Yes.
Yes. David says, "Future risks will not." Okay. There will be no direction for the audit function from Pring. And says there will be no strategic direction for the internal audit.
At all.
And I have another comment that says internal audit may not deliver value.
Okay.
John says the strategic plan may not fully executed.
Okay. May not be executed. Okay. Beautiful. All right, let's go on. So I'm just trying to share quickly with you an internal audit strategic plan template, which you can use as your cheat sheet. All right. Remember, we've talked about why, and we are now trying to talk about what. You see? So in your, and you can use this to mark yourselves. You must have your vision and your mission, which I see in there every time. Then there is supposed to be a strategic context. We'll talk about these ones into detail, but over here is a quick one, just in case we don't get there. You need to have a strategic context, and then you have strategic objectives with supporting initiatives. All right. The standards talk about strategic objectives with supporting initiatives. Then you should have your enablers and resource requirements. Then your performance and success measures. Then a portion where you will demonstrate that your work or the plan is aligned with organizational goals. And then an implementation roadmap and a portion for governance and oversight. I have seen some of them in some plans. It would be good if we adopt this one, and then moving forward, we try to populate all this. Okay, so now let's look at the key components of the internal audit strategic plan. First one is a vision, the long-term aspiration for the internal audit function. So here you are trying to let people see. You see, vision has to do with what we see. So you want to let people know this is what we want to become in your eyes. We want you to see us like this. So it describes what internal audit wants to become in the eyes of its stakeholders. So for example, to be a trusted partner that strengthens governance, risk management, and accountability. That would be wonderful. That your organization sees you as a trusted partner and you are strengthening governance, risk management, and accountability. There should also be a mission, which is the core purpose of internal audit. That is why the function even exists. It's more operational and immediate than the vision. For example, to provide independent assurance and advisory services that improve the effectiveness of governance, risk management, and internal controls. That could be a good mission for an internal audit, function. Then the strategic context. This is the environment in which internal audit operates. It shows that the internal audit strategy is anchored in reality. Now, what would be the context? The context would be nothing about the audit department. It is all about your organization. So you are talking about your organizational strategy and priorities, enterprise risk and emerging issues, regulatory governance and industry pressures, the maturity assessment of the internal audit, i.e. current state versus desired state. So for example, the organization is undergoing digital transformation and faces cyber risks. Then IA must strengthen IT audit capacity and adopt data analytics. So in the strategic context, you just want to understand. Remember that standard 9.1 talks about understanding the organization's governance, risk, and control processes. So that's what you are going to do here. So one of the outputs of understanding, one of the ways by which you can demonstrate conformance is when you have a documented strategic context. All right. Let's move on. Then you have your strategic objectives based on your understanding of your vision and your mission and your strategic objectives or your strategic context. You come out with your strategic objectives. That is 3 to 5 key priority areas the function will focus on over the next 3 to 5 years. And they should respond to both organizational needs and audit maturity. For example, enhance coverage of strategic and emerging risks, strengthen advisory and consulting role to management, develop staff competencies and technical capacity, leverage technology and data analytics for smarter audits. These are strategic objectives for the internal audit department or unit itself. Then we'll have the enablers and the resource constraints. The enablers would be the skilled auditors and the training programs, budget and access to tools, leadership support, and stakeholder buy-in. Then you would have to talk about constraints. Limited staffing, and budget, which is quick cuts across. Then competing priorities with management, and perhaps slow adoption of technology. It could be different in every institution or every company. But the most important thing is that you must identify the things that hold you back and the things that you need that will push the whole strategy execution forward. And again, you need to have your KPIs, specific measurable outcomes that show progress on objectives. For example, percentage of high-risk areas audited annually, recommendations implemented within agreed timelines, stakeholder satisfaction survey scores, and other things. Right? These are performance indicators. Now, you also have to demonstrate alignment with the organizational goals. Now, this portion is very important because internal audit should be able to show how its objectives support the organization's success. Okay, so for example, if the organization's goal is digital transformation, then the IA role may include providing assurance on cybersecurity, IT controls, and change management. So this is where the alignment is. Something we can put out on paper to show that, look, because of what is happening in the institution or the company organization, we are also going to do this. It's as simple as that. So because of what they are doing, we are also going to do this. That link must be able to be established quite clearly. Then we talk about the implementation roadmap. So this is a phased approach to bring the strategy to life, often 3 to 5 years with annual milestones. Maybe for you, you might want to say that, well, year one, you are going to build a foundation, risk skills assessment, and stakeholder mapping. Get to know the strengths and the weaknesses and the skills of your staff of the entire internal audit team, and then do a stakeholder mapping to understand them and their needs and see how you can do a stakeholder management roadmap to be able to appreciate them and try to meet them meet their needs. And then year two would be to expand coverage and maybe adopt analytics. And then year three may be to mature into advisory role and embed continuous auditing. These are just examples. You could have yours, but it must demonstrate that you are moving from one point to the other. All right. Okay. And then governance and oversight. This part tells how the plan is approved, monitored, and reviewed. So the key question: who owns the strategy, who reviews progress, and how often is it updated? And why does it matter? It ensures accountability and continuous alignment with the organizational goals. It's important because, you see, some people do a strategic plan. Sometimes they do a good job and then it is on the shelf. Because we don't know who has to actually execute it. Nobody has actually taken ownership of it, even though it is supposed to be owned by the chief audit executive and the audit committee and all that. Okay, so these are the components of the internal audit strategic plan. Bringing us to the end of the second question, what? We've talked about why, and then we are also now talking about, I just talked about what. Let's move on and talk about when.
Okay, Mr. Aikins, before you move on, there's a question here in the chat box from Mr. Adam. He wants to know, what would the IIA do if the entity does not have a documented strategic plan? What should the chief audit executive do? What should be his next step of action if this documented strategic plan is not available?
Okay, so I mean, right from the word go, the point is that the internal auditor should carry out his own understanding of the strategic context. Okay, because even though there's no strategy, you realize they are doing something. So what are they doing? Is it possible to have an interview? You see, because when you are developing the plan, we'll talk about it, how you do it. There is a consultative approach, and there's also the top-down approach. The top-down approach is where this chief audit executive sits somewhere, and then he will, by his own understanding, do certain things, you know. And the other approach is a consultative approach, which adopts consultations. Talk to the audit committee, talk to the CEO, talk to the board chair, talk to senior management. It will give you a very good understanding of what we're about, even if it's not documented. So based on your discussions, at least you can have an idea, because the truth is that even if it's not documented, the point is that we are heading somewhere. Even though it's not documented, we are still heading somewhere. So through your discussions with management and these audiences I've mentioned, you will be able to gain a fair understanding of where we are going. And then based upon that, okay, so the idea is that you are just trying to understand where we are heading, or in terms of the institution, where the institution or the organization is heading. So when you understand that, then you'll be able to develop a strategic plan that can help. And we always go to the strategic plan of the business because that is where we will have demonstrable evidence of where we are going. But in the absence of that, you can still interview and find out. In fact, even with the strategic plan, you will still have to discuss with management to understand what they really mean by where they are going. Okay, so whether it's there or not, you still have to carry out some interviews to understand further the strategic context. But once you have a good understanding of the strategic context, which is the environment within which you have to deploy the internal audit function, then you can go ahead and develop your plan. Does it answer your question?
Thank you. I believe it answers the question. Mr. Adams, kindly confirm if you are okay with the explanation. Okay, regardless of whether there is a documented strategic plan or not, as a CIE, you are expected to understand the strategic direction of the entity, and from which you are able to build the strategic plan of the internal audit function. Thank
Beautiful.
you, Mr. Facilitator. You can proceed.
Okay, so now let's talk about when. So the issue is when are you supposed to do this strategic plan? Or when are you supposed to refresh it? So normally we do our plans, I mean, follow a typical cycle. So 3 to 5 year horizon is common. Okay, the idea is that, I mean, for an organization which is already in motion, it is assumed that you know where you are going. So if there is an existing internal audit unit or function, then the idea is that you follow them. The moment they change or they refresh or they have another or they review the internal audit, sorry, they review the strategic plan of the organization, then it is time for you to also consider reviewing yours or developing one. See, okay? So there is an initial one that you develop, which is when the unit is starting out. But after you start with the business, you follow a cycle. You just try to be in tandem. You follow or you be in step with management. So when they review their strategic plan, then you also review your strategic plan because so far as there are changes there, it could also imply that you also need to change what your focus is. Okay. And normally it is accompanied by annual reviews to check alignment with evolving risks, strategy shifts, and also resources. Okay. And that is what makes the internal audit strategic plan, the ISP, a living document and not just a one-off binder, something that is lying on the shelf. Okay. But so having said that, what are the triggers for refreshing the plan? What are the triggers for refreshing the plan? Can somebody tell me? What would cause you to, apart from a strategy being changed or being reviewed, what other things could cause the strategic, the internal audit strategy plan to change or to be refreshed? Any answers in the chat box?
Okay, so we have newly identified risks, changes in laws, emerging risks and technology.
Okay.
Emerging risks, yeah. Changes in internal audit standards.
Okay, beautiful.
Yeah. New risks,
beautiful.
yeah.
Okay, so what I have here is number one, leadership changes. When a new CEO or a board chair or audit committee chair comes, normally when they come, it brings a shift in strategy and expectations. Okay, so leadership changes can trigger refreshing the plan. Again, regulatory or governance changes. Regulatory or governance changes. Okay, for example, assuming we just have an amendment to the PFM, or Bank of Ghana brings some directives, or even one significant one was the rollout of this global internal audit standards 2025. All right, regulatory or governance changes. Another one which someone said, yes, emerging risks and market shifts, AI and digital transformation, ESG and sustainability, geopolitical and economic shocks. They can all trigger review of internal audit strategy because, you see, so far as the business is affected and is changing, then we must also change. And then we can talk about organizational strategy refresh. That is when we want to refresh the strategy. We review it and then we try to, that's probably a cyclical one. Or something happens which causes us to, Charlie, we need to change our strategy. The moment it changes, then we also have to change our internal audit strategy as well. Then another one too is performance feedback. And this can be a big one. When you have stakeholder surveys or audit committee evaluations showing that internal audit is not meeting expectations, you must quickly refresh your strategy. That is very important. You must quickly refresh it. Are we good?
Yes, we are good.
Fantastic. Okay. All right, let's move on. So that deals with the when. Now we move on quickly and talk about how. And this is the heart of the matter. How do we develop the internal audit strategy? So over here, we are going to be talking about methodologies as in tools, and then aligning skills, resources, and then also look at how we draft it. So let's quickly do that, and then we will be done. How many friends have we tackled? We've talked about we've looked at how. Sorry, we looked at why. We looked at what, and then when. So now we're looking at how. So that's the fourth one. Okay, so developing the internal audit strategy. So the methodologies that we can adopt, I'm sure there could be others, would be the SWOT analysis, stakeholder analysis, risk-based thinking, and then the balance scorecard. I selected these ones because I think they are the very, very common ones that we know how to use. So after talking about the methodologies, then we will talk about aligning resources, skills, and technology with strategy. And then we'll talk about the drafting process, which I kind of talked about already more or less. But when we get there, we'll still, for emphasis, we'll still talk about it. Okay. So now we are going to use the SWOT analysis. Now, of course, so what normally happens is that we would have to turn the focus on ourselves. Of course, with the SWOT, we're looking at the strengths, the weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, and based on that, using it to help us to form a strategy. Okay? So you would have to turn the searchlight on yourself as in the internal audit unit. You best know your strengths. These are just illustrative. These are only illustrative. So in terms of strengths, which are positive, maybe independence and direct reporting to the audit committee, skilled or qualified auditors, strong methodology and risk-based planning, and good stakeholder relationships. Okay? So you would have to actually document it, and you have to be honest. If you lie to yourself, I guess you're just doing yourself a disservice. Then you have to also look at your weaknesses, which is also internal. Limited budget or staff shortages, over-focus on compliance versus strategic risks, gaps in IT or cyber audit skills. Maybe there's inconsistent follow-up on recommendations. Please, I'm not saying that these are your strengths and these are your weaknesses. Please, let me clarify. These are just illustrative. These are things that you can come with. In fact, when you look, I'll be showing you very soon the appendix to one of the practice guides by the IIA in 2012, where they gave a list of, strengths, weaknesses, and then opportunities here, and also threats. So opportunities, which are external, so organizations push for digitalization, new regulations, chance to expand advisory role and influence, and partnership opportunities. Then you could also have some threats here, which are also external. Rapidly emerging risks, which is very common here. Loss of stakeholder confidence if IA is seen as reactive. Regulatory pressures, raising expectations, and competition for skilled auditors in the market. Anytime you train your people, then somebody will come and poach them and they'll go away. And then you'll be left hanging. Anyway, so these are some of the illustrative, examples of strengths and weaknesses. But let me share with you what this is. You see the appendix, illustrative examples, SWOT analysis. You can see a list. I had just 4, but the institute has 11 strengths. Weaknesses, they have about 16. Opportunities, they have about 7. Threats, they have about 6. So the idea is that you should be able to list all these, and then based upon that, you would be able to leverage them for a strategy. But how do we use the output? You have to leverage on your strengths. So the strategy should capitalize on what your unit already does well. So for example, now I have some examples for all of them. So for example, if your unit has strong relationship with the audit committee, then you could have a strategy that could formalize advisory engagements and build on internal audit's role as a trusted advisor. Because you have a strong relationship with the audit committee, they trust you. So then you should be able to say, well, I mean, then let me leverage on that. Then let me have an objective of positioning myself as a trusted advisor. Again, if there's a weakness, then you have to improve in that area and invest more resources so that your strategy now would address capability gaps. So for example, if your SWOT shows a weakness in IT or cyber audits, then the strategy could include a capacity building roadmap for training, co-sourcing, or maybe getting on board new people, new staff, new IT auditors. Okay. Now, in terms of opportunities, you have to seize those opportunities and try to expand them, leverage them more. So the strategy should position internal audit to exploit external trends and needs. For example, if SG reporting is gaining traction, then IA strategy could add sustainability assurance or readiness reviews to its mandate. And then in terms of threats, you have to mitigate and then protect yourself. So the strategy could prepare IA for risks that could undermine its credibility. So if regulatory expectations are tightening, your strategy could be to strengthen compliance with the 2025 GIAs and adopt new methodologies, for example, continuous auditing or shift into data analytics. This is how you leverage on the SWOT to develop a strategy. Okay. So I had a handout here. I don't think we can go there. Let's move on. Let's move on and talk about stakeholder analysis. So here, the methodologies we are using to build or develop our plans, our strategic plan, we've talked about the SWOT analysis. The next thing is the stakeholder analysis. And to the left of the screen, you can see the stakeholders they have listed over there. You have the board, the audit committee, the executive management, operational management, regulators, external auditors, employees, process owners. And these are the typical expectations they have of internal audit. It is important that you note them. Don't just acknowledge that they are there. We must acknowledge they are there and then go ahead to find out what do they expect of us. So I'm just sharing with you some typical expectations. It could be more than this, or it could be something else than this. So the board is looking for assurance that governance structures are effective. They're looking for insight on risk culture, assurance that the IA is independent and adding value. The audit committee is also looking for objective, risk-based audits, timely reports, assurance on key risks, clear escalation of issues, and strategic advice. When you talk about executive management, they also have expectations of us. They are looking for practical recommendations, insights on efficiency and controls, and support in achieving strategy without us, but we must be careful without us undermining our independence. Now, operational management is also looking for constructive feedback and also looking for help in strengthening controls, advisory support to improve processes. Regulators want compliance with standards and laws and demonstration of independence, quality, independence and quality reports and a follow-up from the IA department. They expect us to be professional because as they sit there, when they look at the institutions and they see that, oh, there's an internal audit unit over there, they have some kind of comfort that we are going to be doing certain jobs. So we should be able to demonstrate that we are independent of the operations and that we are writing quality reports and we're actually following up on the implementation of recommendations. External auditors also have expectation that they can rely on our work. A very big challenge there in Ghana. Anyway, I don't know whether it's changed, but it used to have an issue. But still, they have expectations because the idea is to, where possible, avoid over audit or duplication. And then employees and process owners also, we look for fair audits, clarity of expectations, recommendations that add value, that rather than finding fault. Now, with our understanding of the stakeholders and their expectations, we can do a matrix to assess influence versus interest. So if we plot them all, we would have a matrix where we have interest, and on the other side, we have influence. So we can place them in their boxes. Those with high interest and high influence happen to be the audit committee, CEO, and executive management. How do we manage them? We must have close engagement, active involvement, regular updates, and build a relationship with them because they have a high interest in our work and they can actually influence our work as well, highly. Then we have the high influence, but low interest regulators. We have to keep them informed and ensure that compliance updates are minimal, and then a minimal but consistent contact, okay? Then you also have the high interest and the low influence, the process owners and operational management. So when you place them in this box, then you are able to manage them, okay? Because your strategy is looking at meeting the needs of all these stakeholders. All right, so how do you translate this into a strategy? So just by way of illustration, so if the audit committee expects more strategic insights, then internal audit strategy must include advisory engagements. If regulators demand compliance with the global internal audit standards, then our strategy must include a quality assurance and improvement program. If management expects efficiency insights, then our strategy must embed operational audits and process improvement reviews. This is how you arrive at a strategy that meets the need or speaks to the needs of stakeholders. Okay, so we've talked about, in terms of methodologies, we've talked about the SWOT analysis, stakeholder analysis. Now let's talk about risk-based thinking in internal audit. What is risk-based thinking? I'm interested in getting some responses. Erica, how am I doing with my time? Maybe.
Okay, you have approximately 14 minutes more.
I have 40 minutes more, right?
14.
14. Okay, well,
Yes.
we'll still moving. So what happens if I don't? What happens if I don't stop? Delivering when the time is up. Okay, let's move on. So risk-based thinking. See, when we talk of risk-based thinking, let's not think about risk-based internal audit.
Yeah. So we have a couple of comments here.
Okay.
Eric says preempting the risks and addressing them in your strategy. We also have where your thoughts are aligned with the risks identified. Kwame says averting your mind to what happens to your organization if risks are not managed. Yeah. So these are the comments we have.
But I also have a very, 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 very interesting comment. Somebody says I should continue up to 7. Okay, so this is it. So you see, when we say risk-based thinking, let's remember that when we talk about risk-based auditing, we are looking at something quite operational. Here, we are looking at risk-based thinking in internal audit strategy. Okay, so it is about placing the internal audit's priorities, resources, and objectives to the organization's most significant risks. You see, at this point, you see, over here, we have not even developed our risk-based annual internal audit plan. So we are not taking ambition right now, but we are still thinking risk, even though we are at the point of delivering or of developing our internal audit strategy. We are still thinking risk. So what are we trying to do? And the clue is here. We want, see, as an internal auditor, okay, don't start thinking of risk when you are just doing your risk assessment. See, the question is, what kind of risk assessment do you have to do right now, today, to realize that cyber risks are all around us, or AI risks around us? We are living in it. It's affecting everything that we are doing. So there are some risks that you don't have to spend much time to recognize them. You know that they are high risk, whether you like it or not. So when it comes to risk-based thinking, there are some focus areas. There are three things that we have to do. Look at high impact risks, risks that can significantly affect organizational objectives, financial sustainability, reputational harm, regulatory breaches. IA should ensure coverage through assurance audits and targeted advisory reviews. Now, let me add it to the high velocity risks, risks that materialize quickly with little warning, cyber attacks, AI-related failures, supply chain disruptions. IA must design real-time or near real-time assurance mechanisms such as continuous auditing, proactive risk sensors. See, this is the deal. You know what? At this point in time, you are not going to spend a lot of time trying to do what do you call it? I mean, your risk ranking. You know, when you are doing the annual internal audit plan, you first of all start by identifying auditable units, okay? And then you create your audit universe. Then you come and then risk rank the audit universe. And how do you risk rank the audit universe? You take an Excel sheet and you list all of them, maybe about 20 auditable units, and then you have risk factors like what? Risk factors. What are some of the risk factors? Size, complexity, date of last audit, severity of audit findings, and what else? Management interest, you know, external changes, internal changes, and all those things. Now, do you realize that when it comes to that activity, okay, that task, it is very, very subjective, because the risk score that you get at the end, if you realize that this area, it is high risk, I have a gut feeling it's high risk, you can come back and then adjust your risk ranking factors or your figures to let it go, to push it up to a high. Charlie, you can't do that one for this internal audit strategy, the risk we are talking about here. AI is AI. It is here. We all know that it is high risk. Cybersecurity, we all know it is high risk. It is, and we all know the high velocity risks. So at this point in time, this is where the auditor, you must probably be speaking with the risk manager or the risk officer to understand what are the risks that he has identified as high risks. You see, because your high risks may be very different from the risk manager's high risk. Why? Because the risk manager's risks are real. Our risks are affected by our judgment. Let me give you an example. I went somewhere to do an ERM implementation. So the first part had to do with the documentation, okay? Developing the policy, and then also the risk appetite framework and the statements and the metrics and all those things, and also the risk assessment, risk assessment manual, you know, and then the framework and all the other things. And at a point in time, we had to develop a risk register. So we started it. The internal auditor was not coming for those meetings. He was sending his boys to come. So one day I was there when the audit, sorry, the risk manager. No, they didn't even have risk manager. They had a risk management committee chair. He came to me and said, "Fred, do you know what is happening?" I said, "What's happening?" Charlie, the internal auditors are fighting us. I said, why are they fighting you? Then they said, you know what? They are also not knowing that the risk, guess what happened? They have, their internal audit team has also gone to do a presentation to management about risks. and they have taken management to, a friend is saying, Aqua Safari, and gone to spend some 3 or 4 days there, trying to tell them the risks that are facing the institution. Whilst me and the risk management committee chair and the risk champions, we were in the conference room somewhere, looking at the real risks coming from the various business units. So you see, then you realize that there is a problem. I don't know whether they've solved it because our friends and consultants have left. I've taken my money, I'm gone. But you see, they have a problem because this is a risk. This is an internal auditor who is not talking to. Meanwhile, we all say that we are all knowledgeable in the ISO 31000 framework. On the left side, what is it? Consultation and communication. You see, let the external consultant even have that problem, but not you, the internal auditor, within the institution. You don't talk to them. There is a risk consultant there. We are doing stuff and things together. He didn't come there. And then he marshaled the people and then bundled them off somewhere. So then we have conflicting risks. But I told them that, look, these are your risks that you are facing. If internal audit will not speak to you to understand the risks, then he can go and generate his risks. So we populated the risk registers with all this. So I don't know what is happening there, but you see, here you must be talking to the chief risk officer or the risk management, or the risk manager, because these risks, not the ones that you generate when you are developing your what's it called? I mean, the internal audit, the annual one. These are the real risks that the CEO doesn't sleep over. So if you say that you are going to develop a document that is in tandem with that high-level strategy, in every well-written strategic plan for a business, there must be risks to the strategic objectives. You must go and see, you must look at those things. Those are the things I'm talking about. If it's been done well, then they are high-level risks that face the institution. High impact, high velocity risks, and push for strategic alignment. Risks that are tied directly to the organization's strategic goals. Expansion to new markets, digital transformation, ESG reporting, blah, 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 blah. IIA's role is to provide assurance that risk responses support the success of those goals. So we are not talking about the risk assessment that you would do when you are coming out with your annual risk. No. These are real high-level risks that impact on the objectives, the goals of the institution. Let me give you some practical steps. Review the enterprise risk profile. Engage with ERM to understand the top risks and emerging risk radar. And then you prioritize these risks by impact, likelihood, and velocity. Then you map it to IIA objectives. That is, align internal audit strategic objectives. For example, IT capacity building, ECG audits with these priority risks. Then you embed it in your audit plan. So from the strategic audit plan, it can now move to, I mean, later when you're doing your audit, your annual audit plan, and you ensure that there's annual and multi-year audit plans directly addressing these risks. And then you communicate by sending regular reports to the audit committee on how the IIA's work aligns with top enterprise risks. Okay? Okay, handout 4.7. I think I want to show handout 4.7. I don't know how I'm going to do it. Hey. Okay, let me see. Let me, where are you? Good. Hello, can you see my Excel sheet here?
Yes, we can see your Excel sheet.
So this is just an illustrative. Look at it. So you have an enterprise risk here, cybersecurity breach due to rapid digitalization, non-compliance with ESG reporting requirements, and weak risk culture leading to poor decision making. So in terms of impact and velocity, we say it is high impact, high velocity. So the internal audit strategic objective would be to build digital and IT audit capacity. And the supporting initiative, which is spoken in Principle 9, is that we will train 50% of staff in IT audits or co-source cyber expertise or pilot continuous auditing tools. Then the audit engagement will be cybersecurity control review, data protection audits. So at this point in time, at the audit engagement, then we have descended into the annual audits, okay? But I don't want to focus on that one. I'm just showing you the link from where a very good understanding of enterprise risks at the point of developing the internal audit strategy can cascade into an audit engagement at the bottom level, okay? At the annual level. Okay. Let me go back to my slides.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Frederick. Our chair, Ms. Brenda, has been kind and given us extra 5 minutes. So, Mr. Aikins, we have 5 minutes.
5 minutes.
Yes. So we are looking
Brenda,
at
you don't like
ending the
all.
session at about 3:30.
But I've always known Brenda doesn't like me, so I mean, she's just confirming. It's okay.
She likes you so much. Thanks.
Thank you, Brenda. Okay. So now let's look at balance scorecard. All right. So we've looked at the methodologies. We've looked at SWOT analysis. We've looked at the stakeholder analysis. We've looked at risk-based thinking. Now we want to quickly look at the balance scorecard. So what is a balance scorecard? Who can tell me about the balance scorecard? I wish somebody would have given me a quick overview. Anyway, okay, so when it comes to the balance scorecard, we are just trying to let or to look at internal audit performance from 4 perspectives. Okay, so we are looking at going beyond just financial measures to track performance across 4 perspectives. So in terms of finance or financial, are we delivering value for stakeholders, customers and stakeholders? How do stakeholders perceive us? Then internal processes, what must we excel at internally? And then learning and growth. So we don't have much time. I wanted to give a very good overview, but let's go briefly to this. So you see, we have 4 quadrants here. Financial, yes, okay. So under financial, we have the objective would be to deliver assurance and advisory services efficiently with the KPIs listed. Okay. Then in terms of customer or stakeholder, we are looking at to strengthen trust and relevance with the board, audit committee, and management with the possible KPIs there, that of internal processes and learning and growth as well. Okay, so this actually makes us be able to look at what the audit department is doing from 4 perspectives, okay? Because we don't think that looking at the bottom line alone. All right. So for balance scorecard, the message is that we are trying to balance the lagging indicators with the forward-looking indicators. Okay. All right. We'll have more time to discuss this another time. See, now aligning resources, skills, and technology with strategy. We are talking about how to develop it, and we looked at one methodology. We looked at 4 things. The next thing is aligning resources, skills, and technology with strategy, because a strategy without enablers is just wishful thinking. So what are the resources? So what are the resources? We are talking about fuel for the journey, all right? So there must be a budget which reflects the scope of the coverage and considers the organization's risk appetite. a mismatch signals trouble. If enterprise risks, blah, 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 are occurring, but funding doesn't, audit will be behind. Okay. If risks are crystallizing and we are not having the resources to be able to carry out audits, then we can't be able to protect it. Okay. So we may be able to benchmark ourselves against our peers. What percentage of revenue operating costs go into internal audit in similar organizations? Quite a tough task anyway, but let's move on. So then the next thing under the resources is the skills. So resources, skills, and technology. All right. We are aligning our resources, skills, and technology. So in terms of skills, that we will say is the audit muscle. Traditional skills, as in control testing, compliance are necessary, but insufficient. New competencies are critical if you want to deliver at a strategic level. IT and cybersecurity, ESG and sustainability, data analytics, soft skills, business acumen. In other words, we are saying that in order to be able to power the internal audit strategy, you must have these kind of skills. I'm sure when you look at all these skills, you realize that we all fall short. IT and cybersecurity, ESG and sustainability, data analytics, soft skills, business acumen, understanding the industry's drivers, not just the rules. Okay, now when it comes to technology, which is the enabler, we are looking at audit management software, data analysis tools, and IIA automation, and also collaboration platforms, which enhance real-time communication and stakeholders like teammates and audit board and other things. Okay. Remember that we are saying that we are aligning resources, skills, and technology with strategy, because when you have a strategy and you are not able to enable it, then you are it's just wishful thinking. So something to reflect on. Look at your audit function today. Are resources keeping pace with expectations? What skills are most urgent to build or acquire? And what one piece of technology would make the biggest difference if adopted this year? That is for a reflection. Now, the third thing when it comes to the how is drafting process. I think I mentioned this consultative or top-down. The CAE can do it alone and then, go for approval or whatever it is. Or you can engage the audit committee management and start just to ensure that there is buy-in. But as far as best practice is concerned, a blended approach is optimal. Leadership sets vision, but consultation tests and then refines it. Okay. All right. So let's talk about where. That is, where do you want to position internal audit?
Mr. Speaker.
Yes.
The time is up.
Okay. All right. So I believe we can have another session to finish it up. Okay. So yeah. I'm sorry I couldn't finish it. Maybe I didn't manage my time well. It's very loaded. Sorry for exceeding the time. Thank you very much for the opportunity. All right.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you so much for your time, and thank you for the insightful presentation. Without wasting any more time, please, the floor is open for any questions that we might have during the presentation, or questions that are already bothering us. Okay, before the presentation. I think a couple of questions have already been put in the chat, so we'll do with them. And then you can please go on to put more questions in the chat box, so the presenter can also address them. Okay, so the first question we have here is, could internal audit staff be considered as stakeholders?
As being what?
Can we consider internal audit staff as key stakeholders?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, you're also stakeholders, staff, yes. Because you are affected by the work that you do yourself.
Okay. All right. The second question, Mr. Speaker, would you want to have all the questions together and address them, or you want to address them as and when they come in?
No, I mean, just mention them one after the other and then address them.
Okay. So there was a question from Faustina. She wanted to ask, what about institutions that do not have a dedicated risk unit? What should their approach be in drafting the strategic internal audit plan?
Yeah, you will still have to consult, because you see, I mean, if they don't have a dedicated unit, it doesn't mean that they are not managing risks. It means that risks are there, but it hasn't been structured or formalized into a unit for somebody to manage. Okay, sorry, they don't have a formalized a unit to manage it, but they are still there because so far as they have objectives, there are risks. So what you have to do is to go systematically and then interview them, okay, right from the top to the bottom to get the relevant risks that are going to be like shocks, which will impact the strategic objectives. Okay. One good thing is that even if they don't have a dedicated risk department, but if they have a risk, sorry, if they have an internal audit strategy, like I'm saying, any business strategy worth its salt would have a portion that is dedicated to risks that are affecting the strategy. So you can start from there. Pick those risks and start discussing it with the senior management, the CEO, and then the audit committee chair to see whether they represent all the risks at the top level that can impact the achievement of the strategy.
Achievement of the strategy. Yeah. Okay. The next question is from Mr. Boache. He wants to know, must an organization have a risk register before an internal audit can risk-base its audit strategy?
No, you don't need to have that in place before.
Okay.
You don't need to have that in place.
Okay.
Because the question I answered previously, I sure would go for this one as well. Even if they don't, the fact that the risk register is not there doesn't mean that there are no risks. So you have to find a way of getting those risks.
Getting those risks. Okay. So the next question here is, how is a risk management plan different from the strategic plan?
The risk management plan.
Yeah.
Okay, so the risk management plan has so many components. Okay, the risk management plan, I mean, depending on which standard you are using, the risk management plan is just talking about how you are going to go about risk management within the institution. Okay, it's focused solely on risks. Okay, so then it starts with identifying risk identification, risk analysis, risk evaluation, risk response, and all those things. Okay, very, very different from the internal audit strategic plan.
Okay.
Because our strategic plan is positioning us as value-added partners to senior management and the board in achieving the overall objective. That risk management plan is just talking about the fact that there's something called risks which can prevent us from achieving this. And so let us look at what we can do to leverage on the responses that we can put in place to make sure that it doesn't jeopardize our attempt to achieve our objectives.
Okay, that's well answered. There's another question here. The person wants to know if auditors can be part of the risk committee.
To the extent that you also have risks in there, yes, you can be part of it. And you must be, because you are also a unit within the institution. You must also have your own risk register. When I develop risk registers for institutions, the very first one that I develop is the auditors, because I want them to know that you also have risks within your unit.
Okay. So there's a question here which is outside of the presentation. Mr. Lanyo wants to know, must a skilled auditor have an accounting profession and a CIA? He is of the opinion that just a CIA is enough. So this question is, must an auditor have an accounting profession together with the CIA certification?
Yeah, well, the answer is, it depends on what kind of auditor you want to be. If you want to be a statutory external financial auditor, then you have to have a CA.
Yeah.
Because you are not qualified to review financial statements and give an opinion until you are a qualified accountant. But if you want to be an internal auditor, then that is where the issue is. For an internal auditor, you don't necessarily have to, as an individual, and note this, please, as an individual, you don't necessarily have to be a CA or a CA. But as a team, it's important that you have somebody like a CEO on your team, because your mandate includes reviewing financial statements. And if you have a qualified accountant who has practicing experience, he will be the best person to handle those things. So I keep saying that for the internal audit unit, you can go and do an audit of the finance department, which is different from auditing financial statements. When you go to the finance department, you want to do an audit. Okay, so you start with the mandate of the department, you start with objectives. Do they have a strategy? And this and that. That is called O&M, an audit of organization and management of the finance department. That one, we cannot do it. But if we have to review financial statements and give an opinion, then you must be a qualified accountant. Is the difference clear?
Yeah, very clear. Okay, there's another question here. Mr. Dikra wants to know whether the balance scorecard works in every sector, especially in relation with agriculture.
Oh, the balance scorecard, yes, it does. It works. It depends on, it works in the public sector, it works. In the private sector, it also works. I mean, it's just a tool.
Yeah.
It works in all three sectors. Private
It works
sector.
in every sector.
Yes, private sector, public sector, and the third sector, NGOs. It also works there.
It works everywhere. Okay. Mr. Ojo wants to know, I think you've answered this question already, but I'll read it again. He wants to know, is the feedback survey outcome is it the feedback outcome survey that informs the change in the plan, or as a result from prior audits or risk assessment that informs the changes in the strategic plan?
Okay, you are talking about the last point, is that right?
Yeah.
Okay, so it is feedback from your supervisors, audit committee. They've assessed, just say 1 year there, you didn't do well. You are weak in certain areas. Okay, then it is not about your personality, it's about your strategy. They'll tell you that, oh, perhaps you didn't cover this aspect well. Perhaps this thing was not covered. This and that. Then it means that you have to review the way you are helping us. So the feedback simply means that you didn't help us well. Then you have to find out, oh, what didn't I do right? Then you have to go back to the drawing board and see whether your objectives are actually aligned with that of the corporate strategic objectives. And that's where you have some work to do.
That's where you have to work. Okay. Do we have any more questions? Okay. I think our audience are asking for more session with you.
More sessions?
Yes.
Say again?
They are asking for more session on this topic with you. They are asking if they can get another session regarding the strategic audit. Okay, Mr. Prince, I see your hand raised. Do you have a comment you want to make, Prince Ojo?
Yes. Good afternoon to Mr. Aikins, my former boss.
Hi, Prince. How be?
I'm fine. I hope you're doing well too.
Yes, I'm managing by God's grace.
Yes. There is something that I wanted a clarity to. So where an institution already has a risk function, and they already assess the risk, so you have the risk register. Must the internal auditor have to go through the risk assessment methodology that you mentioned earlier on? For example, the size of the unit, the management interest or priority that is placed on that unit or department or process? Or must you just look at the risk register, review it, whether it captures every risk that the institution faces, and then map the risk register, the risk that is in the register, to the units, the respective unit or activities that you are going to audit, and then you proceed with the planning? I just need some clarity in that area.
Okay, good question. It's a question that I handle quite often when we are doing risk-based audits. You see, because there are two kinds of risk-based audits. Okay, two approaches. The first approach is where there is no risk management function. Okay, that one, there's nothing like that. So you have to do your own thing. Okay, so now, so that's when you go through the normal things that you're already aware of. Okay, Prince, you're already aware that you do. But when there is a risk function, now what happens is that the auditor no longer has an audit universe. He has a risk and audit universe. Now, the second approach, before you see, because so when you have a risk function, it presupposes that the board is being served with risk reports. Okay, that's assumption, because now you have risk reports being sent to the CEO, being sent to the board, and there is a risk committee of the board. There's probably there's a CRO or something. Now in that instance, the annual audit process begins by the internal auditor asking the board, what risks do you need assurance of this year? So the conversation is between the auditor and the board, i.e. presented by the audit committee. Because now you know the risks. So which ones would you like me to give you assurance of? But that's a lot of work and they don't do it. Okay, so depending on the answer that you have, you may have to simply rely on that on that risk universe, okay, which has already been established. And it will be one that has high risks, medium risks, low risks. If you are blessed to get guidance from the board, i.e. the audit committee or the risk committee, that, oh, these are the risks that we are concerned with. So this is what we want you to give us assurance of. Then you go ahead and you do that. If they don't, then you have more work to do. Then you have to take whatever risks they have, what you have in the risk register, and then review it and see whether truly it is high risk or it is medium or whatever. That means that is double work for you. That is where you are going to use that approach where you are trying to see whether, you are trying to map it to the various units and all that, which is very, very laborious. Prince, are you okay?
Yes, I get everything clear.
Very
okay.
well explained. Okay. I think we'll take the last question for the Q&A session, and then we'll move on with the webinar. Mr. Opon wants to know, what if the identified and developed risks by the internal audit function is not accepted by management? He meant that what the risks identified and developed by the internal audit function is as a result of absence of a risk management register. He wants to know what will be the approach by the chief audit executive. What will he do?
Please, can you read the question again?
Okay, so he wants to know, what if the risk identified and developed by the internal audit is not accepted by management? That's the first.
Okay, wait. Let me get that portion well. The risk identified by the internal auditor is not accepted by management.
Accepted by management, yeah.
Oh, okay. So then, in other words, they don't agree that is a risk.
Yes, exactly.
So your question is, what do we do in such an instance?
Now, I think
at this point in time, pardon me.
Yeah, the question is, what should you do?
Yes, at this point in time, now, when you look at the previous standards, okay, the last one, management of risk, there's something I've forgotten that standard because it's obsolete now. But it has to do with escalation. Over there, it says that when the chief audit executive realizes that management is taking on risk beyond their threshold or beyond the risk appetite, he must talk to them first. So you must simply try to explain why this is a risk. You see, So the procedure, let me show you the procedure, and then after that, we'll talk about the context. Now, you must try and explain to them that, look, you are taking on risk over and above the threshold. It is damaging to us. If they don't agree, then you escalate it to the audit committee level. Okay? But what happens in practice is that, you see, sometimes we ourselves, we lack business acumen, because if you are doing risk identification, you must be able to link your risks that you have identified to an objective. It makes it very easy. If you link your risks to an objective, at times it becomes quite easy to explain it. But when the risk is not linked to an objective, it's difficult. But I can foresee perhaps a situation where a manager somewhere, maybe, management is just being adamant because of certain reasons. Perhaps the risk that has been identified probably touches on a process that, excuse me to say, the management is benefiting from illegally. Okay, so then there would be a fight. All right, but all things being equal, when you are able to link your risk to the objective, that is why it's always advisable to have the objective first, and then let the objective throw out the risks. But in the instance where you do all that and management is fighting you, sometimes it may become very obvious. Okay, but then that is where you have to seek, support from your audit committee. Okay, it's a dicey situation, I guess you can take something from what I've shared.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Speaker. As I said earlier, and everyone on call can agree with me, this was an eye-opening and insightful presentation. And we are so grateful for you taking time from your busy schedule to have this session with us. Okay, and that brought us to the end of the presentation and the question and answer session. We'll move on to our closing remarks and our announcements from our immediate past President of the Institute of Internal Auditors, Ghana, in the person of Mrs. Harriet Ikia Akari. Madam, please, if you're on the call, you have the floor for your closing remarks.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Erica. Good afternoon to you all, colleagues. And thank you very much, my senior brother, Frederick Pokoo-Aikins, for such an insightful presentation. Oliver Twist, we are asking for more. So maybe the council will decide on what to do, and members will be informed accordingly. Thank you very much once again. We would like to observe the following announcements and take note of them. The first one is the CIA Challenge exam for 2025-26 window. The window is opened and the Institute is running classes for ICAG, Institute of Chartered Accountants, Ghana members. So if you are a Chartered Accountant with ICAG, you have the opportunity to attend the class. We have shared the information with members. The class is starting on Saturday, coming Saturday. I think it's going to be for 5 weeks. So please, let's take advantage. We mentioned about certified internal auditors in the presentation. So just take advantage, register, and be part of it. Secondly, I would like to let members know that if you have ever sat and passed the CIA Part 1 or the IAP or Internal Audit Practitioner examination, and you are eligible to apply for the award of IAP, which is now a non-expiring certification. So if you once sat for the CIA and you passed the Part 1 and you have lost it, please, there's an opportunity for you to get it as an IAP. So let's take advantage and do the needful. The IAP certification now doesn't expire. So if you have CIA Part 1, it will be converted to IAP certification for you. Then also, if you are a certified internal auditor and you have been deactivated, you may apply for reinstatement without re-examination. But it is upon the payment of a reinstatement fee and completed required CPEs. So that one too, if you are once a certified internal auditor and you have been deactivated, you can reactivate, you can be reinstated without writing the examination and also complete the required CPE credit hours. For the 2025 subscription, it is overdue. Members have been having notices. We even extended it for a period. If you still haven't paid and you want to pay, please make sure you take advantage and get it paid so that you'll be in good standing and you stand to benefit all the benefits that accrues to good standing members of the Institute. Again, we are rolling out a lot of training programs, mostly paid training in the month of September. So be looking out for the trainings we are going to roll out. The first one is on the 17th of September. There's going to be a training on root cause analysis. Root cause analysis. So please note it. When you receive the invite, you take advantage and get on board. Then the next one will be from September 29th to 30th, and that will be operational auditing. So please take notes, and when it is advertised, you take advantage. And we have also been issued with call for volunteers. We need volunteers to serve the Institute. And the volunteers are going to serve on working committees. Since we have a new council, we are constituting new working committees. We have shared the communication to all members. Let's note that it is only members in good standing who will be nominated to serve on the committees. So if you are not in good standing, make sure you are in good standing so that you partake in all of that. Then we would also want you to be looking out for our board, CAE, CEO, and Audit Committee Forum. It is also known as Governance Forum, which is slated tentatively for 19th of November. 19th of November. It is one of the flagship conferences of the Institute. And this time around is for chief audit executives, board members, audit committee members, and also CEOs. The details will be shared in due course. We would also like members to note that the 12th AFIA conference is taking place next year in the month of May, and the venue is going to be Cape Town, South Africa. You don't need a visa from Ghana to go to South Africa. So if you are interested, you just get your tickets and your bag packed, conference fee paid, and you get on board. We go to South Africa, Cape Town. Then the 2026 International Conference is going to take place in Singapore. This time around, it is not going to be in July. So we have to start our approval process early. The conference is going to be from the 22nd to 24th of June, 2026. So let's take notes and make sure we start our processing early so that will not be left out. Then I would also want to inform all of us that our webinars, we put them on our YouTube channel. So you can visit our YouTube channel. You have the recordings of the webinars, even the one we had today, we'll upload it so that you can have it. And the previous ones we have had, They are all uploaded there. If you look for the IIA Ghana YouTube channel, you can listen to it over and over again. We would also like to invite authors for articles. If you can author an article, or you can write an article, or you can put something together for IIA Ghana and global platforms, you are warmly welcome to do so. You can contact the Secretariat, and the Secretariat will help you do whatever you have to do. On this note, I would like to thank you all very much for being a part of today's webinar. And I believe that we have learned a thing or two, and it's going to help us to add value to our organizations. Thank you very much. Over to you, Erica.
Thank you, Madam Harriet, and thank you for your final remarks. Without wasting any more time, we'll call one person to give us a closing remark, or a closing prayer, sorry. My name is Erica Aram Kwame. I'm the team lead for Business Office Audit at United Bank for Africa. I call on Madam Pearl Moore to give us a closing prayer, so we bring the curtain to a close on the webinar on strategic internal audit planning.
Okay, shall we say a word of prayer together? Our Heavenly Father, we thank you for this session. We thank you for bringing us together to learn something that will help us in our careers. We pray that whatever we have learned, we shall be able to practice and use it to the best assistance to our various organizations. We thank you. In the name of Jesus, we pray. Amen.
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 Thank you all for joining.
Amen.
Okay. Like Madam Harriet said, the recordings will be on the YouTube channel. Kindly make time and go over again, and it will be a great help to you and your organization. Thank you all. Have a lovely
Now, please, what about the material, the handout?
Okay.
I will share. I
also
will share with. I will
be
share with the
shared.
institute, and I'm sure they will.
Is it the slides? It will be shared with those who registered for
Okay,
the webinar.
through our mails, right?
Yes, through emails.
Okay. Bye.
Okay. Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you all. See you another time. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you, Mr. Presenter.